The Cosmic Dance of Creation, Unveiling the Eternal Spirit, by William Walker Atkinson. In this instruction, it is held that the cosmos is continuously undergoing the process of creative evolution, or progressive creation, a process without beginning, without interruption, without ending. This is the view accepted by the best scientific, philosophic, and theological thought of the present day, and of the best thought in these fields in the past as well. Worlds appear, continue in existence for a time, then disappear, to be succeeded by other worlds composed of the same fundamental substance and energized by the same actuating power. Cosmic creation is conceived as constituting an infinite cycle of cycles. The creative spirit is eternal. The creative substance is eternal. The creative activity is eternal. This is the report of the best thought of all times, all lands, all peoples. Creation, the process of creation, results from the action and reaction, the coordination and correlation of the positive creative principle, i.e. creative spirit, and the negative creative principle, i.e. creative material substance. Positive spirit plays upon negative matter, energizing it and stirring it into activity, working upon it and working it up into forms and conditions more and still more complex and intricate through the creative process of change and becoming. Creation has its minor and major cycles, its tides, its ebb and flow, but the creative process as a whole is held to be continuous, constant, uninterrupted, endless, co-equal in eternity with the positive and negative principles which manifest it. But you may ask us, where is God to be found in creation? Has he no place in the creative process? In answering this question, we are mindful of our promise not to invade the field of theology any more than is actually necessary. Theology is the science of God and of religion, which treats of the existence, character, attributes, and works of God. Therefore, we prefer that you obtain your theology from the authorized sources and founts. We feel that there is nothing in the present instruction, however, to conflict with any sound, rational theological view. On the contrary, we believe that in this instruction such views will find an earnest and staunch support. This instruction is not designed, nor is it desired, to supplant theology or your own particular theological views. We see no difficulty in the reconciliation of our own teachings with those which you have received from the authorized theological founts. But, nevertheless, we feel that we would be leaving something unsaid were we to neglect to point out to you certain important implications of our teaching, although in doing so we may seem to be invading the realm of theological thought, at least to the extent of setting our foot over the borderline. Accordingly, we shall ask you to consider the following logical deductions from the premises previously set forth in the present instruction. First, we ask you to remember that all theological teachings inform you that God is spirit. If this be so, and you cannot conceive that God is matter, then God must be found in spirit, if he is to be found at all by you. But where should he be looked for in spirit? Let us answer you in the Hibernian or Socratic fashion by asking you the question: where are you, yourself, found in that real essence of your being which you know to be spirit? You must answer, at the very center, core, or kernel of my spiritual being. Then we ask you, what is this self-report that it is? When you ask it the question, comes your answer. It says first of all I, then it says I am, then it says I am I, and when pressed for its final answer, it says I am that I am, and I understand that by that it means pure spirit. Then we ask, once more, what has the God you believe in answered when asked who and what he was? You answer, he said merely, I am that I am. Then we say to you, you, yourself, have answered the question that you had asked of us, namely the question, where is God to be found? Has he no place in the cosmos? He has a place in the cosmos, and you have found that place. That place is at the very center, core, or kernel of spirit. Your spirit is the microcosm. Spirit is the macrocosm. Remember the ancient Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the great, so the small. God, by whatever name he may be called, or even when he is given no name, is the I am, the I, the self of spirit, and he says all that he can possibly say concerning his nature when he announces, I am that I am. If, in spite of our desire to keep out of the field of theology, you still insist upon another answer, the answer to the question, is God personal or impersonal spirit, we feel justified in answering. If by impersonal, you mean a being infinitely transcending the limitations of finite personal existence as we know it, then we must say that, in our opinion, God is impersonal. But if by personal you mean a being possessed of the attribute of self-consciousness and capable of the consciousness of I am I, or I am that I am, then, in our opinion, such a being properly may be regarded as personal. Further than this, we shall not go in our statements concerning theology. Frankly, we feel that you should be able to work out the balance of the problem for yourself, aided by the theological teachings which are acceptable to both intellect or intuition, to completed reason, as we have defined it. An ancient Oriental teacher once said, "It is not enough that men believe in God. They must get God." We add, men get God through the medium of the something within themselves, the indwelling spirit. If God is the essential entity of spirit, and if the spirit within you is a focal point or center of expression of spirit, then God must be within your spirit just as he is within the spirit of the universe. And if he is there, within your spirit, surely you should be able to find him and to get God, as the old sage said. We can but point the way, you must travel the road. Spirit, and that which is the self of spirit, is not only infinity of being, in existence everywhere, but is also the indwelling spirit which abides within yourself, and which is the ultimate reality or real self of your individuality. In your contemplation of the infinity of outside existence, do not ignore the something within yourself. All is in the all, and the all is in all. You cannot escape beyond the realm of infinite spirit, but equally true is it that spirit cannot escape from existence within you. It is in you, as truly as you are in it. In this last statement is contained the essence of the great truth of the inner teachings of all philosophies and all religions. When you master this truth, you will know that which when known all is known. Strive to catch its spirit. Let us here ask you to read and consider the following significant, though somewhat whimsical lines of an unknown writer. Thou great eternal infinite, the great unbounded whole, whose body is the universe, whose spirit is its soul. If thou dost fill immensity, if thou art all in all, then I must be within myself or not be here at all. How could I live outside of thee, when thou fill earth and air? There surely is no place for me outside of everywhere. If thou art God, and thou dost fill infinity of space, then I'm in God, think as men will, or else I have no place. And if I have no place in thee, and if I am not there, where can I be, where could I dwell and still not be somewhere? Then I must be a part of thee, no matter if I'm small. For if I'm not a part of God, there's no such God at all. The concept of indwelling deity is not a new one in philosophical and theological thought. Indeed, it is one of the oldest philosophical beliefs, and it appears very early in the theological thought of practically all religions. Technically, it is known as the doctrine of immanence, from the Latin term immanere, meaning remaining within. The Encyclopaedia Britannica, 11th edition, in its article upon immanence says, immanence, in philosophy and theology, is a term applied, in contradistinction to transcendence, to the fact or condition of being entirely within something. Its most important use is for the theological conception of God as existing in and throughout the created world, as opposed, for example, to deism, which conceives him as separate from and above the universe. It should be observed that the immanence doctrine need not preclude the belief in the transcendence of God. Thus God may be regarded as above the world, transcendent, and at the same time as present in and pervading it, immanent. The conception of God as wholly external to man, a purely mechanical theory of the creation, is throughout Christendom regarded as false to the teaching of the New Testament, as also to Christian experience. The contrary view has gained ground in some quarters so far as to postulate a divine element in human beings, so definitely bridging over the gap between finite and infinite, which was to some extent admitted by the bulk of early Christian teachers. The development of the immanence theory of God has coincided with the deeper recognition of the essentially spiritual nature of deity, as contrasted with the older semi-pagan conception, found very largely in the Old Testament, of God as primarily a mighty ruler, obedience to whom is comparable with that of a subject to an absolute monarch. Modern philosophical, theological, and metaphysical thought has inclined strongly toward the general doctrine of immanence, and the influence of this general idea is manifest in practically all recent discussion and writing upon the subject. Professor William James expresses this fact in the following statement contained in one of his works. Those of us who are sexagenarians have witnessed in our own persons one of those gradual mutations of intellectual climate due to innumerable influences that make the thought of a past generation seem as foreign to its successor as if it were the expression of a different race of men. The theological machinery that spoke so livingly to our ancestors, with its finite age of the world, its creation out of nothing, its judicial morality and eschatology, its relish for rewards and punishments, its treatment of God as an external contriver, an intelligent and moral governor, sounds as odd to most of us as if it were some outlandish savage religion. Our contemporary mind having once for all grasped the possibility of a more intimate Weltanschauung, the only opinion quite worthy of arresting our attention will fall within the general scope of what may roughly be called the pantheistic field of vision, the vision of God as the indwelling divine rather than the external creator, and of human life as part and parcel of that deep reality. Several years ago, a writer in one of the leading magazines presented a series of articles in which he set forth that which his investigations had revealed to be the dominant principles of the philosophical and theological teaching of our great universities. The following passage is quoted from one of the articles of the series. It correctly represents the modern tendency of thought along these lines. Now that man has discovered that there resides in his nature a spirit or energy that is divine, the colleges say that he can summon it to work his will. The potency and future operation of this spiritual force no man can compute. Science has found a way through psychology to God. The opportunities for the race, through invoking in the human consciousness the brooding spirit that fills all space, are absolutely infinite. Science, therefore, is demonstrating along new lines, or at least is claiming to demonstrate, that man is God made manifest. And modern philosophy, as set forth in American universities, holds this incarnation not as a fanciful and merely beautiful ideal, but as a working and understandable principle in the soul of humanity. The professors, therefore, who are digging what they believe to be the graves for dead dogmas, stand as exponents of the teaching that man is the embodiment and conscious expression of the force that guides all life and holds all matter in its course. Man has begun the cycle of that triumphal daring prophesied by ancient seers, and which appealed so potently to the imagination of Poe. Not merely in religious rhetoric, but in reality, the schoolmen say, is man the avatar of God? In this connection, we also ask you to consider the following excerpts from the remarkable lecture on the religion of the future, delivered a few years ago by Professor Charles W. Eliot, former president of Harvard University, before the Harvard Summer School of Theology. The new thought of God will be its most characteristic element. This ideal will comprehend the Jewish Jehovah, the Christian universal Father, the modern physicist's omnipresent and exhaustless energy, and the biological conception of a vital force. The infinite spirit pervades the universe, just as the spirit of a man pervades his body and acts, consciously or unconsciously, in every atom of it. The 20th century will accept literally and implicitly St. Paul's statement, "In him we live and move and have our being," and God is that vital atmosphere, or incessant inspiration. The new religion is therefore thoroughly monotheistic, its God being the one infinite force. But this one God is not withdrawn or removed, but indwelling and especially dwelling in every living creature. The scientific doctrine is that there is one omnipresent, eternal energy, informing and inspiring the whole creation at every instant of time, and throughout the infinite spaces. The doctrine of God's immanence is inconsistent with the conception that he set the universe a-going and then withdrew, leaving the universe to be operated under physical laws, which were his vice-regents or substitutes. If God is thoroughly immanent in the entire creation, there can be no secondary causes in either the material or the spiritual universe. The contemplation of the concept of the indwelling spirit, the immanence of divinity, tends to bring the individual into the feeling and consciousness of his underlying unity with the ultimate source of being. He then realizes in his own consciousness the fact that, as the poet has expressed it, the all is one, and all are part, but not apart as they seem to be. And the blood of life has a single heart, pulsing through God and Claude and me. In the spirit of this new conception of the relation between the infinite spirit and the individual spirit, we ask you to consider carefully the following wonderful statement of Professor Josiah Royce of Harvard, that eminent philosopher and teacher of philosophical truth. The infinite self, in the very least of the daily experiences, is known to you as something present. This is the deepest tragedy of our finitude, that continually he comes to his own, and his own receive him not, that he becomes flesh in every least incident of our lives, whilst we, gazing with wonder upon his world, search here and there for first causes, look for miracles, and beg him to show us the Father, since that alone will suffice us. No wonder that we remain agnostics. Hast thou been so long time with me, and yet hast not known me? Such is the eternal answer of the Logos to every doubting question. Seek him not as an outer hypothesis to explain experience. Seek him not anywhere yonder in the clouds. All experience contains him. He is the reality, the soul of it. If we have the true insight of the deeper idealism, we can turn from our chaos to him, who is our true and divine self, and can hear from him with absolute assurance this one word: O ye who despair, I grieve in you. Your sorrow is mine. No pang of your finitude, but is mine too. I suffer it all, for all things are mine. I bear it, and yet I triumph. This word of the self, I say, we can be sure of, for it is the one final word of our whole philosophic thought. Some philosophers hold that the creative power is wholly and completely involved in its creation. Others hold that only a part or portion of the creative power is involved in its creation. Some of the Oriental schools, in fact, hold that only an infinitesimal portion of the infinite being is involved in or concerned with the manifestation of creation. Again, some schools hold that the creative spirit enters into and pervades the material substance as salt enters into and pervades the water of the ocean. Others hold that the action of the creative spirit upon the material substance is akin to that of the magnet upon a mass of steel filings, i.e. by induction, the magnetic emanation being held to ensoul the tiny particles of steel, causing them to take form and manifest motion, just as spirit so ensouls the material substance with similar results. Others employ the symbol of the sun of spirit, shining upon the surface of the great ocean of material substance, and being reflected from its face. The sun is regarded as penetrating the ocean by means of its emanated rays, being reflected from any point of its surface, and causing motion and surface manifestations of form in the superficial portion of the great body of water. In this view, it is held that the sun of spirit, in itself, never actually enters into the material substance. Merely its emanated rays enter into the latter, they're working upon and working up the material stuff, thus creating forms and activities and manifesting the process of becoming. Carrying still further this symbolic illustration of the sun and the ocean, it is shown that the sun continually causes portions of the water of the ocean to rise upward in the form of vapor. This vapor, condensing, then falls upon the ocean in the form of rain or dew. Here attention is called to the fact that in every falling raindrop or dewdrop, as in the ocean itself, there is ever reflected the image and form of the sun. Each drop has its sun, its light, its radiance. Each drop is as a miniature ocean in this respect. The sun's reflection appears in the great ocean and in every tiny raindrop or dewdrop. Yet the sun itself ever remains over and above all, though its emanations are ever in all. Thus, by the symbol of sun and ocean is explained the nature of the presence power of spirit in the material substance. Thus is illustrated the transcendence and the immanence of the creative presence power. It is a wonderfully effective symbolic illustration, one worthy of respect, whether or not it is accepted as properly and fully representing the truth. You will find that it will grow upon you as you consider it. It will stick in your mind like the burrs in the wool of the sheep. The sun has always been a favorite symbol for the supreme power or the supreme being. It seems to appeal powerfully to the religious emotional nature, the poetic imagination, and the philosophical intuition of man. Perhaps intuition recognizes it as the most appropriate and most fitting symbol of a truth that can be expressed only by means of symbols. Just as the mind of man has ever speculated concerning the how of creation, so has it sought earnestly for an explanation of the why of creation. In all developed philosophic, metaphysical, and theological thought there is found at least an attempt to answer the question, why did the supreme power create the universe? In some cases there is found the attempt to dismiss the subject as part of the great mystery, something beyond the knowledge or thought of man. But even in such cases there is usually found an attempt at some kind of explanation. Many of these so-called explanations are so crudely anthropomorphic, so evidently the naive answers of childlike minds, that they require no serious philosophical consideration or discussion. Those who originated them certainly lacked the philosophic imagination. Of these would-be explanations, some merely offend the intelligence of the thinker, as, for instance, the statement that he desired to be worshipped and glorified, and so he created beings to worship him and sing his praises. Others offend the heart of man, as well as his intellect, as, for instance, the idea that the cosmos is merely an amusement-affording moving picture show operated by God in order to serve as the pastime of eternity, or, again, the idea that life is but a great game played by God, with his creatures as the pieces, or as the ball, a game played by him for the purpose of exhibiting his own infinite power, or, perhaps, for the purpose of defeating an imagined boogie. Intuition revolts at such ideas. It knows that there must be an infinite rational meaning attached to the infinite manifestation of the infinite presence power. Nothing less than this will satisfy the needs of intuition. Far more satisfying to both intellect and intuition is the interpretation furnished by that general philosophical school known as vitalism. Vitalism, under several names, is well represented in the history of philosophical thought, ancient and modern. Bergson is one of its more prominent modern advocates. Its spirit is expressed in a somewhat unpleasant form by Schopenhauer and his followers. It is also found implicit in the basic teachings of ancient Buddhism. This broad philosophic trend of thought known as vitalism may be indicated by the following general statement of its basic conception, viz. Spirit has its most essential and active attribute in life or livingness. The life principle of the universe, which is spirit in one of its aspects, being essentially and characteristically livingness, naturally finds its normal expression in the activities of life, through the multitudinous forms of life which it has created for the purpose of such expression. The expression and manifestation of life and livingness constitute the legitimate and natural activity of its essential nature and character. Accordingly, the life principle, which is an aspect of spirit, eternally creates the infinite series of universes in order to manifest and express in objective form that essential livingness which is within itself as the innermost core, kernel, and heart of itself. It creates in order that it may live, i.e., express its livingness in objective form. In order to do this, it works upon and works up the universal material substance, in order to produce material forms to be animated, energized, and inspired by its living spiritual energy. It creates bodies of material substance in order to breathe into them the breath of the spirit of life, and thereafter to live and act in and through them. Bergson's basic concept may be stated as follows. A free and spontaneous life is the very essence of the real. Pushing out from within, seeking expression, life buds, and breaks forth into original creation. The laws of nature are life's habits, its ways of proceeding and doing things. Reality is pure creative life, life fed from within rather than from without. It evolves and creates by means of its own inherent and spontaneous creative power. Life is not static, not something that was once something different, not a past left behind and a future spread out in front. It is a single, continuous movement, carrying all its past with it and pressing forward into a future which it is forever creating. Evolution is the original impetus of life, the living act and progress. This general conception of the presence and activity of a will to live in nature is found to pervade many and varied forms of philosophical thought. It exerts a peculiar fascination upon the philosophic mind. The philosopher once falling under its influence rarely ever entirely escapes from it thereafter. The conception is supported by the observable facts concerning the evident presence in nature of an active principle, energy, or force which manifests the characteristics attributed to this hypothetical will to live. There undoubtedly is a conative energy working in and through nature, which has as its evident end and purpose the manifestation, expression, perpetuation, and continuance of life, of living forms. In fact, the very idea of nature implicitly involves the notion of this element which constantly inspires the natural processes. The instinct of self-preservation and that of the perpetuation of the species constitute two of nature's strongest and most active forces. In them, the will to live shows itself most plainly. The will to live is found ever at work, striving, endeavoring, seeking and attempting to manifest and express itself in objective actuality and livingness. Its presence is plainly discernible in the germinating seed and the growing plant, in the developing germ, embryo, and young of animal life, in the adaptation of the living creature to its environment, and in its differentiations designed to meet the requirements of changing environments, in the provision for the sustenance, support, and survival of the living creature, and the arrangements for the perpetuation of life and livingness in the offspring. When you think and speak of nature's processes concerned with living creatures, you are thinking of the manifestation and expression of this will to live, which is one of the aspects of spirit. Schopenhauer was so impressed with this idea of the will to live, and found so many evidences of its presence and activities on all sides in nature, that he felt warranted in postulating it as the most essential element and factor of the world spirit, which he regarded as being the creative agent of the universe. Indeed, he went so far as to apply to this creative spirit itself the name of the will to live. The Buddhists, likewise, regard it as the actuating energy of the universe, holding that it, the will to live, is the creator, the preserver, the destroyer of the universe. They also regard all forms of desire or will as forms, phases, or modes of the activity of this universal will to live. Others, in the same spirit, regard the universal actuating energy or creative spirit as power with the desire to act, or desire with the power to act, the chief end, aim, purpose, and intention of such action being to manifest livingness. In this consideration of the creative spirit as life, however, you must not lose sight of the fact that wherever there is life there is mind. Wherever there is mind there is life. Life and mind are attributes of spirit, life being the more fundamental, mind being a form of the expression of life. If the universe is instinct with life, then mind must be involved in its every part. And so it is, as all careful thinkers sooner or later discover. That mind is present in the creative processes of the material universe has ever been evident to thinking, reflective minds. The presence of law, order, and system is an inevitable, invariable, and infallible indication of the presence power of living mind. Law, order, and system are apparent in nature, on every hand. Strive as we may, we cannot escape from this conviction. Moreover, in the cosmic processes there is to be found an invariable logical sequence of cause and effect, a pure logic knowing no exceptions, variations, or contradictions. This being present, that becomes. This being active, that results, is the rule of the cosmic logic. A reverent scientist once said that science is but a reading by the human mind of the thoughts of the infinite mind. A famous astronomer once said that his work consisted merely of thinking God's thoughts after him. There must be mentation involved in nature's processes, else the human mind could not read logical process in them. Science is based upon the presence and result of this logic of nature. Logic, however, is impossible and inconceivable without the premise of a logical mind. And mind is impossible and inconceivable without the premise of life. Nature, being what it is, must be the manifestation of living mind. And so, then, we have discovered that the cosmos, the universe, the world in which we live and move and have our being, is the creative activity of an infinite and eternal living spirit, from which all things flow and proceed, and of which all things are forms of manifestation and expression. You, the individual who is reading these lines, you are a focal point or center of the manifestation of life, mind, will, in that world of manifestation and expression. You are the microcosm, corresponding in nature and essence with the macrocosm of which you are the focal point of expression. You partake of its nature and being. You are like unto it in spirit. You are made in its spiritual image. Like it, you possess the creative spirit, and you are manifesting, to a greater or less extent, the activities of creation in your everyday life. The individual spirit, which is you, is constantly at work manifesting its creative power, playing upon material substance, working upon and working up this plastic medium by the power of your will. You have been doing this work chiefly unconsciously, instinctively, unaware of the source of your power, uninformed as to the methods of effectively employing this great creative power within you. You will see at once that if you can but open up a more direct channel of communication with the infinite fount of power, then you may partake of a greater share of that creative power. The spiritual creative power is available to you. You may secure its services and employ them in the tasks and work of your everyday life, and toward the attainment of your ideals. You, the individual creative spirit, are entitled by your birthright to claim and demand the aid and assistance of the infinite and eternal spirit in which you live and move and have your being, and from which your life and power proceed and flow. You have the natural and inalienable right to draw upon the infinite fount of creative power, and to apply that power through your own creative channels. Let us carry this thought with us into our study of the next section of this book. End of chapter. This was Chapter 7, Creator and Creation, from the book titled Spiritual Power out of the series Personal Power by William Walker Atkinson. See a link in the description for the entire series. And subscribe for more content on your personal power.